Hi, my name is Owen. Today I'll be doing a quick review of Jeffrey J Lach's Freakishly Human, The Rise of Jayden. What I want to do is give a brief overview of the book is about, tell you things that I liked, and tell you things that I didn't like. Before we get started, I want to give a disclaimer. The author of this book did reach out to me, and he sent me a free copy in exchange for a review. However, as always, my reviews, they're unfiltered. They're unbiased. I was not paid to give a positive review of this book. I want to give you guys my genuine feelings and reactions to this book and tell you guys whether or not you should check it out. Jumping straight into the overview, this book takes place mostly on Earth. It is a young adult sci-fi action story, and it's about two alien species, the Zorkonians and the Luminites. And they, in the past, had a devastating war, and the Luminites, who are our good guys, learned that the Zorkonians are targeting Earth next. So they do what any responsible alien species would do, and they kidnap Earthling teenagers and give them superpowers so that they can defend themselves against the coming invasion. Very fun concept. I really enjoyed it. But it's a very fun, fast-paced read. The book is, I read it on my Kindle, it was around 250 pages, which is a lot shorter than the books that I normally read, and honestly, that was very refreshing for me. It gets into the action very quick, and the action is its strong suit, which I'll get into more detail later. However, I think the biggest adjustment that I had to make when reading this book, not only was the plot moving a lot faster than I was expecting, but as it was young adult, I had to adjust to like a more simplified, I'll say, style. I haven't read young adult in a while, so I don't know how much of it was like the author's particular writing style or just like young adult in general. But I found a lot of the character work to be fairly simplistic, especially with the teenagers. The leader of the alien, like the good guy aliens, Therian, I found him very compelling, and I thought he was really cool. But the teenagers, other than Jayden, but even her to a certain extent, I didn't find myself like invested in their stories, mostly because I felt like their personalities and their characters were like relegated to like their top surface level, like basic characteristic. And some of them didn't even get like that characteristic. Like there's the character of Doug, who like doesn't get power, but he's like kind of the comic relief, but that's kind of all he is. And then the character of Ming, like she's like a small, like she's like small, she's like not very tall, but she has like super strength essentially. So it's kind of like the dichotomy there. But I didn't feel like her personality, other than her being small, was really like shown through that. So it's kind of just like base level, not caricatures, but just very simplistic characters. And that just led me to not being very invested in whether or not like they survived. I mean, obviously I didn't want them to die, but like other than Jayden, who like we spent a lot more time with, so you get to know her story and like her inner thoughts a little bit more. And I think that's just a symptom of it being a young adult, so it's a little bit simplified in terms of like the delivery and like the dialogue and stuff like that, but also just the length. While it was very refreshing to read, I wouldn't have minded an extra 50 or 60 pages so we could spend time with these characters and learn more about them and get invested in them on a deeper level, other than just like one trait or one thing about them that we get to know. However, the character work, while I felt it was a little bit weak, it was redeemed tenfold, I'll say, by the action. That was by far my favorite part of the book. This author knows how to write popcorn action. And what do I mean by that? So first of all, he did a really good job of giving the teenagers very unique and very visually evocative power sets. So there's one character, like I was saying, like Ming. She can make herself very dense, which makes her strong but slow. There's a guy who could like earthbend. There's a guy who could like transform into a monster. There's a girl who could heal. And the way that the author writes this action, it's very simple. I'm not getting lost in the weeds of, wait a minute, who's doing what here, who's doing what? It's very simple. Like, she uses a force field. She punches. He flies. It's very simple, and yet he's able to weave these action set pieces where it's 5, 6 of our heroes fighting at the same time against aliens who are shooting guns, they're flying around, it's chaos, everything's blowing up. But I can visual it in my head, and it's like the scene in Avengers, like when they do like the camera spin around like all the Avengers. That's what I felt like when I was reading. I'm like, whoa, it's like so much is going on, and they were a lot of fun to read. And thankfully for me, the majority of this book, especially in the second half, is just action. Like I think the last like 40 or 50 pages is just like the final battle, which I love. It doesn't get like overly stuck in the weeds of like who's where, who's doing what. It gives the perfect amount of details so that you understand what's going on, but you're not confused by what's going on. And it was a lot of fun. This book is definitely a part of a series. It ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger. So I'm waiting part 2 personally. It was a fun read. It was a quick read. So if you have a weekend where you're just looking for like the equivalent of like an episode of like an action-packed like cartoon, like I don't know why. Well, this book reminds me of, that's what I wanted to talk about as well. This book really reminds me of the series I Am Number 4. I don't know if that's the name of the series, but that was the first book in the series. I read that a couple of years ago, and it's very similar where it's like super-powered teens take on an alien invasion. Those are the vibes I get, and that series also does a very good job at like describing action and like unique power sets and stuff like that. So it really reminded me of that. However, this book, Freakishly Human, is a lot faster paced, I would say, than that series. So it's really just a fun read, and it was refreshing. And I love that I'm getting more into sci-fi. And this was another end of the spectrum for sci-fi for me, because I started with Asimov, who's very like technical science, the future, and then I read Bringer of Light, which was very like philosophical. And then I'm reading this one, which is pure action fun. So I'm getting the whole breadth of the genre, and I'm loving it. So as always, too, this book is self-published, so I want to show my support for that. I'm going to put the Amazon link in the description. Support your self-published authors, guys. I'm going to say it forever and ever and ever. So check it out, and I hope you guys enjoy the book as well. Thank you, and thanks to Jeffrey for sending me a free copy. All right, guys, please subscribe if you'd like to. It helps out a lot, and I will see you soon.